to Immigration Quicktake. This is Ellie Rutledge with the American Immigration Lawyers Association. States like New York and localities across the nation are taking action to protect immigrants. And recently, the New York State Assembly and Senate passed the Immigration Assistance Service Enforcement Act. Here to share information about the bill and its intended impact is Camille Mackler, co-chair of the Media and Advocacy Committee for the New York chapter of AILA, and Director of Training and Technical Assistance for the New York Immigrant Coalition. Camille, thanks for joining me. To start, can you explain what the bill is designed to do?
The idea behind the bill was to really create a response to the growing problem of immigration fraud, specifically what we tend to refer to as notario fraud, which is people scamming immigrants into believing that they can obtain legal status for them. And when we started this process, our idea was to come at this issue from a sort of a 360-degree approach. We wanted to not only create new penalties to punish the bad actors, but also help the enforcement agencies understand what the problem is by specifying what is law, what is not law, or rather what is practice of law and what is not practice of law. And we also wanted to get some tools in there to empower the communities to speak up for themselves and to protect themselves. And that's why we wanted to push not only these new penal law provisions and these new crimes that are created, but also a private right of action and the creation of the Office for New Americans in New York State as an executive agency.
Thanks, Camille. Who were some of the key players in getting this bill passed?
We worked with a lot of community groups and elected officials. We worked very closely with the governor's office and with Assemblymember Crespo, who's an assembly member from the Bronx in New York City. And then on the community side, we worked with a lot of different groups, Catholic Charities, Make the Road New York, NILAG, which is a New York Legal Assistance Group, some other groups, and of course the New York chapter of AILA. It was really important to work with as wide a base as possible because we wanted to get as much support for this as possible. We wanted to make sure that that all key players would be able to support the bill and then ultimately push it through.
We know that there are often changes to legislation between drafting and passage. What can you tell us about the process?
So when we started off, actually a bill was passed last year that was really bad. It required registration of everybody who provides immigrant services who are not lawyers or BIA accredited reps. So essentially, we viewed it as a way for notarios to legitimize themselves because they would have been able to obtain a certificate from the Department of State, and they would have put up on their wall saying that they're authorized to provide immigration services. But then the public doesn't usually understand that selecting a form, filling out a form, that is actually practice of law. So when that bill passed, we were able to get it vetoed the first time around, and then Assemblymember Crespo reintroduced it, essentially the same. And we had to have a lot of conversations with him and with our governor's office and with other key players to make sure that they understood that the registration piece was not one that we were going to support, that we would continue to push to defeat it. And once we got them to come on board with that, once we got them to agree to remove the registration piece, which was not easy, we then presented them with what we viewed as our dream bill, so to speak. We had a lot of provisions that defined the practice of immigration law specifically, based not only on the federal regulations, but also as the case law that have interpreted them. And we had a much broader private right of action in there. We had a much broader penal statute, changes to the penal law in there, and of course throughout the political back and forth we ended up scaling back on a lot of what we hoped to see and to achieve the bill that we have today. And we think it's a good bill. It's definitely a very good start, but we also made it very clear that we're going to continue fighting for more protections, for more clarification in the law.
Any words of advice for AILA members and chapters who might want to work on similar legislation in their area?
I think that coalition building was definitely the first step. We sort of came at it from a lot of different viewpoints, but ultimately it was the fact that we all came together and became involved together and sort of as a community found a basis that we could all agree on and push that forward. It not only helped us best define what would be what would go into a good law and what we wanted to see in a good law, but it also helped us with our elected officials and our government agencies push it through because they saw us as a united front. So I think that if anybody wanted to try a similar bill or a bill that addresses a similar problem or really any kind of state legislation, I think it's important to build that consensus. So start reaching out to the key players in your state.
Thank you, Camille, for joining us. For the rest of you, please stay tuned for more updates from the American Immigration Lawyers Association.